Ask Sherwin-Williams during the 4-day super sale, April 19th through the 22nd, and get 40% off paints and stains with prices starting at $26.69. That means 40% off our most popular color family, blue. Psychologists have found it to be soothing and relaxing, which makes it especially great for bedrooms and bathrooms. And of course, get 40% off all of our other colors. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Meet the next generation of podcast stars with SiriusXM's Listen Next program, presented by State Farm. As part of their mission to help voices be heard, State Farm teamed up with SiriusXM to uplift diverse and emerging creators. Tune in to Stars and Stars with Issa, as host Issa Nakazawa dives into birth charts of her celeb guests. This is just the start of a new wave of podcasting. Visit statefarm.com to find out how we can help prepare for your future. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Bob Dylan, Lupe Fiasco, Dice Raw, Rhymesayers label are some of the names my next guest is associated with. She just dropped a new project, Beautiful Prison, and joins the library with Tim Einenkel in Webster Hall. NIkki Jean, welcome to the library with Tim Einenkel. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sometimes I stand out in the rain. Don't know why. Can't explain it. Can't relate to a blue sky. All my people in place.
So when the names Irving Berlin, De La Soul, The Roots, you read your bio and obviously those names pop out. How has each of those artists kind of shaped you as an artist?
I'm wondering what book I was reading that talked about ignition. I feel like maybe it was The Talent Code. And they talk about, whether it's athletes or artists or just having an experience when they're very young that makes them fall in love with or become passionate about whatever their field is going to be. And so for me, that was easily Irving Berlin's 100th birthday celebration, where I fell in love with songwriting, and it just changed the trajectory of my life. To be a songwriter is to be immortal, and I listened to all those songs that he had written and just his amazing, really awe-inspiring story. And the songs didn't sound old. 100, especially when you're 5, 100 is very old.
Oh, yeah.
But the songs sounded new and fresh. And I was like, that must be the greatest job ever.
That's awesome. Speaking of songwriting, you have Pennies in a Jar.
Yes.
And it's features songs that are co-penned by, Burt Bacharach, Carole King, Carly Simon, Bob Dylan. Big heavyweights. If you think about your own writing prior to this project and to now, how did, if at all, did your writing or your approach to a song change or even stay the same after this Pennies project?
I think it is impossible for me to write how I did before the project. They say to increase knowledge is to increase sorrow. Right. It's like before I began that journey, there was so much more I didn't know. I take kind of solace in how much I still don't know.
Right.
Because it's like, yeah, but in the world of things to know, I still know relatively nothing. So like, that's kind of how I let myself off the hook. Like, don't use that as an excuse. You're still mostly ignorant on mostly everything. But I learned so much through working with them about song structure, about different ways to write a song, but almost something ineffable at the same time. You step in the room with some of these people and there's just kind of a magic in the air around them. And you can't teach it. I think that it's I'm a regular meditator, so I think it's almost like in some Tibetan traditions where the teachings get passed down like physically, like you have to be in the presence of the teacher to receive it. And I hope that I got some of those vibes from spending 4 years with some of my favorite American songwriters that have ever lived.
Never take yourself away. Don't ever take yourself to a place where I can't find you. Don't ever
You're not
take
just, you've not just collaborated with, traditional singers, so to say. You also have collaborated with hip hop artists.
Indeed.
Lupe, Black Thought, Dice Raw. What role has hip hop played in your life growing up, and then continues to play as an artist?
I think it's funny that the song that kind of helped catapult my career is called Hip Hop Saved My Life, because in so many ways it really did. It's also intensely meaningful for me to be out here opening for Atmosphere, because one of the first early hip hop projects I fell in love with was God Loves Ugly.
Nice.
As someone who, like many teenagers, just felt completely misunderstood, just a little mixed emo girl from Minnesota, and then you have someone like Slug who's like God Loves Ugly. You're like, oh yeah, then I can be loved and I'm lovable, and even if everything's all wrong, it's all right.
Right.
And that was so powerful for me. So a lot of people come up to me now and they're like, oh, hip hop saved my life. Like that song, it was there for me and this and that. And I think God Loves Ugly was my hip hop saved my life, like was my version of that.
Just a 10-letter word. Discretion is the name of my cement feathered bird. And if you didn't hear, then fuck whatever's heard. I think you got the sickness, I suggest you get it cured. Caught up in the mix of a bottle full of fix. I'ma hobble down the street.
I think that when in a career way, after Hip Hop Saved My Life came out, or even before that, I would go into studio sessions and I would have piano and I'd sit down and play, and it just didn't, people couldn't see it. They always wanted me to be an R&B singer. They always wanted me to write on beats. They always wanted me to do this stuff, and I was always very resistant to it because I was such a fan of classical, like Americana pop songs. And those were the songs I wanted to write, like Carole King, like Joni Mitchell. Like that's who I felt myself as an artist, despite my deep love for God Loves Ugly, Common's Resurrection album, Southern Playlistic, Cadillac Funky Music. I mean, 93, 94, you got to talk about Doggy Style. Like you've got The Far Side, Lab Cabin, California. Like we're in New York, the infamous, of course. So it's like my deep love for the Purple Tape and hip hop was really through my veins, but I didn't want to be pushed into that space.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, don't push me there just because I'm a black girl. Like, let me make the music I want to make. And it didn't happen for me. Pennies in a Jar was that opportunity. It was my producer, Sam Hollander's vision saying, no, but you love these writers. Let's put you in a room with these writers. Like, you're one of these writers. And we did the whole album. When Columbia heard it, they dropped me. Went to S-Curve. No one knew how to break it. The album was released, and I remember the reviews coming out and saying, R&B princess, NIkki Jean. And I was like, I like R&B, but I just wrote a song with Bob Dylan.
Right.
What makes it R&B?
Mm-hmm.
It's because I'm black. And that's something I've been, cognizant of. I have so much respect for women in the industry like Mickey Guyton in Nashville, who's like a black woman country singer. It's sometimes difficult to step in these places, and there's so many women of color who make music that doesn't conform to what you expect to hear coming out of the mouth of that person,
right,
you know? And it very rarely turns into a massive success. So on the heels of that, and just the reception, and that was, I don't want to say the reception, because it wasn't the reception, it was the realization of where you are. And I felt very devastated after Pennies in a Jar came out, and what ultimately was a safe place for me was still hip hop. Even after I put out an album that was not hip hop at all, hip hop was still a safe place for me, as it had always been for me to express myself creatively. I want to say it was a safe place for me creatively, because we can never say that hip hop as a whole is a safe place for women.
Right. When you mean safe place, is that you yourself kind of reassuring that safe place, or is it also people around you?
No, it was the embrace. It was the warm embrace of the community, and just being like, you know what, let me put on this beat. Let me return to this community. Not that I had left it, but musically I had left it. Musically, I'd spent 4 years completely like, okay, now I'm in mid 20th century because I love it here. And it was like, yeah, but it don't love you. And you're like, oh, that's true. Where loves me?
Right.
And you step back, you collect yourself, and you step back into a space where you're like, okay, I'm gonna make new music. I'm gonna make a new project. And just so blessed to be able to, call on friends and kind souls who I've known and worked with, or knew through acquaintance, that were very helpful. So like, as I stepped back in, I was able to reach out to like 88 Keys and Ninth Wonder and Ill Mind and The Social Experiment, and on this latest project, Jake One, and all of them were just so generous with their time and their talents and their abilities. Blessed.
Speaking of the new project, A Beautiful Prison, I hear the title, and I could totally be wrong, but I also think you could also say like the gift and the curse of this art. What is the purpose of the title?
So, and one of these days I'm going to hunt down this quote, but I heard this quote that said, you're going to spend more time in your mind than you do anywhere else. So you should furnish it beautifully. And I feel that I have beautifully furnished. I've filled it with such beautiful art and beautiful people, memories. But no matter how beautiful a prison is, it's still a prison, And the idea that so many of the obstacles and perceived challenges and hardships in our life are of our own creation, and they're of our own perception. It's a perceptual creation. And you can make it beautiful and melancholy, bittersweet, as a lot of art is. But a prison is a prison. Mm-hmm. And we all want to be free.
The table setter of the project is People on Planes. Why are you starting it? Why do we start off with that song?
I think it's very important to me, even though a lot of my songs deal with relationship and like intimate personal relationship dynamics, because I think I've spent a lot of my emotional life there. I actually hate that. I hate that for women artists. When I listen to other artists, when I listen to men artists, that's not how my favorite artists, that's not how their projects go. Mm-hmm. And as a woman artist, I want to have songs on my project that are not that. I want to lead with songs about the world and my perception of the world, because I think about more things than like dudes.
Right. the song is great, and what kind of stands out is you asked the question, what could go wrong?
Because I'm a jerk.
What kind of answer do you want to, like, what's the answer? I mean, is there an answer?
Well, I think it's kind of like, you know, if I have a glass pitcher and I put it on top of my refrigerator, right, sitting on the door, and then I open the freezer, it's gonna fall, right? I'm sitting on the couch, I'm looking at it like, what could go wrong? It's just and to me, when you fill a space with hurt people, you're gonna get more hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
You fill the country with guns and frustration. What could possibly go wrong? Like everything could go wrong. And I always say to like, I hate repeating myself. I always say that, but like as humans, we repeat ourselves in tiny little micro circles and in larger scale patterns. So we have school shooting after school shooting after school shooting, and we have terrorist attack after terrorist attack, and we have People in Plains is one of those songs that is always timely because unfortunately there's just always going to be tragedy in the human experience, but especially I think with how America handles its affairs.
Right. What is that like as a, because you do it with an earlier song a few years ago, Hands Up. Like, what is it like to have kind of these two tracks that are unfortunately, or fortunately, unfortunately going to be relative for a while.
Evergreen.
Yeah, evergreen, so to say, right?
Evergreen sadness.
I mean, as an artist, it's like, all right, so I feel like people are going to know who you are, right? But at the same time, this song and the tragedy of America is coming with that song, the constant reminder that we handle stuff shitty and we continue to.
Yeah, we're not the best at it, but I think that I have a responsibility as an artist where you look at like Woody Guthrie, who spoke truth to power his entire career. I have a responsibility as an artist not just to stay in the confines of my mind, but to look out the window and say, this is what I see. And it's, every time we write a song, it's a time capsule. There's so many, writing with the songwriting masters, which I've had, humbled to have had the opportunity to do. Mr. Tom Bell said, songs are only about two things, love or escape. You start sitting there and listening to the songs and you just sorting them. Love, escape, 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 love, escape. We're all just kind of archaeologists, like going back when we listen to old music. And I look at myself as like leaving, this is who I was and this is how I saw the world at this moment in time. So that if I'm blessed enough to have somebody listen to one of my songs 20 years from now, they can be like, hopefully, we send up prayers that they can say, oh, so much has changed.
Right, hopefully, yeah. The title track, Beautiful Prison, starts out, and I apologize if I screw up your lyrics.
Forgiven. You're forgiven in advance.
I'm known to do that.
It might be better. It might be better than what I came up with, in which case I'll be like, that is what it is. We're going with that now.
You go, living in a beautiful prison, voices in my head are inmates. Found out I lost my religion. You can't be faithful without faith. Can you just talk about these lyrics and kind of the purpose of the track?
Indeed, since you've now rewritten it. No, yeah. that is what I had intended. Beautiful prison. So that's really like my thoughts and my feelings, which we don't get to learn about in school. They'll teach you how to add. They'll teach you how to read. We will go on YouTube and we will learn how to do like a great smoky eye, but we don't really invest in the skill of managing our thoughts and our feelings, which is something that can be applied in every area of our life. But it didn't even occur to me to begin learning how to do it until like the last several years, where I was like, I could get a handle on this very useful skill. I think we all have voices in our head, not all crazy, like pathological voices, not in that way, but like, oh, I should do this or I should do that, or definitely feelings of self-judgment, self-doubt. Humans have a negativity bias. We have patterns of thought, only some of them helpful, most of them not. And all of us want to feel better. So as we are having the experience of these negative thoughts or these repetitive thoughts or just non-helpful clutter, we don't want that. We would love to be in a beautiful feeling place at all times. Those voices, those thoughts, they want out as much as I want them out. They want to be free. They want to retire. And I think that when I say I found out I lost my religion, I just did have, the year Pennies in a Jar came out, the year after, I had a extreme crisis of faith. And when you really don't believe, you can't talk yourself into believing it. Like, you just don't believe. You could tell me right now, like, apples way, way more delicious than, like persimmon. And I'd be like, what kind of persimmon? Like, I'm not going. I just don't believe you. And I like an apple, but I like a persimmon more. You could tell me the sky is green, and I would be like, I'm not going. Like, no matter how much you talk to me about it. And it's the same with yourself. If you really don't believe something fundamentally, you can't talk yourself into it. Right. And I've been very fortunate to have a very strong belief, which allowed me to make Pennies in a Jar, like, which allowed it to even happen. And it wasn't just Pennies in a Jar coming out and commercially doing very terribly, although I do want to say at this point I have recouped on that project. Score. But it wasn't just that. It was a number of life events that I didn't trust anything anymore. Most importantly, I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my own judgment. And so I couldn't believe in anything. And at that point, when you have no faith in anything, there's really, being faithful is impossible. Faithful to what? Right. Yeah.
In Beautiful Prison, but also in Candy. So Beautiful Prison, you talk about how the person you're talking to doesn't really know who you are. And then Candy talks about how people don't really understand who you are. So who are you talking to in each of these tracks?
Myself. Yeah. Always talking to myself. Always trying to get myself free. And hopefully one of the things that I've learned from Sean is be vulnerable enough to allow, my self-liberation to be of service and a liberating tool to others. So yeah, like talking to myself and really going and saying like, yo, you don't know yourself well enough. You listen to Candy and you're like, maybe you don't take good enough care of yourself. Maybe you don't treat yourself like a friend. Maybe you're not kind to yourself and you put yourself in situations that aren't fair to you.
I hope I'm interpreting this track right, but Pink Lemonade seems to change trusting yourself or the partner you're talking to. So when did that transformation happen, going from Candy to Pink Lemonade?
That's a good call, because I wrote Pink Lemonade several years after I wrote Candy. I was working in Los Angeles as the head of HR for an ambulance company. I'd moved out to LA, and I was like, I'm over music, which is like, why go to LA if you're over music? It's the worst place to go. But I think getting out there made me really realize, like, I hate this industry. I don't like it. And I was like, you know what I wanted to do before music? I wanted to be a doctor. Let me take some prereqs. And I was doing good in my prereqs, and I was like, wait, what if I take all these prereqs and find out I hate patient care? So I became an EMT. And on the last day at EMT school, we had our ride along. And I found out that I'd just gotten really soft. I think years of being an artist had just made me really soft. Like I was too, like I still remember the patients that we had that day. I will never forget them. And I was like, I can't walk around with all this all the time. And the experienced EMTs that I was with that day, they were like, oh, you just kind of get numb to it. And I was like, oh, unacceptable. You know, like it's unacceptable for me to become numb to what it is to be human.
Right.
I don't know my way around Los Angeles, and I don't have any experience as an EMT. Let me be a dispatcher. It's a terrible idea. Dispatchers have to know the city like the back of their hand. And when you're a dispatcher, you are the supervisor on duty for medical questions.
Nice.
So it would be good to have some medical experience. No, I became a dispatcher at this wonderful company in Los Angeles, and it was trial by fire. Like it was 12-hour shifts, a couple 24-hour shifts. Just being a dispatcher is an extremely stressful, difficult job, and nobody thought I would make it. I didn't know nobody thought I would make it, but they didn't think I would make it. And I just like dug in, and it was miserable, but I thrived, and I became the head of HR for that company pretty quick, 6-7 months. And then I would do all the onboarding, all the compliance, all the payroll. And what it did in a fundamental way is reestablished my faith in myself. It was like, yo, you are capable. You can do things. No matter how many times you tell yourself, like, the value of your art isn't based on the reception of it or how much it sells or anything like that, it still feels shitty. It feels bad to have a project fail. It's hard to feel in your gut like, no, I'm good at what I do. You're like, then why are you broke working in an ambulance company? I don't understand that. So there's like this does not compute. But working at the ambulance company, I was like, people rely on me, and I'm good at my job, and I come through, and it just really set that foundation for me to begin to trust myself again.
I absolutely love that you end the project with Red, Black, and Blue. I love it's just you and a piano, and it really highlights kind of...
It almost didn't make it.
It highlights you. It highlights your voice. It's an incredible track.
Thank you.
What's your absolute favorite thing about the piano?
Oh, about the piano, about my other voice, about my therapy, about my home. It is a home for me. For many years, probably starting in 2003, maybe before then, but right in there, I became friends with Rob Glasper. And you listen to Rob play, and I'm like, for many years, I was like, I can't play the piano. Like, he's playing a different instrument. Like, he plays the piano. Right. What I'm doing is like clunking around. But I ultimately realized just how I don't have Aretha Franklin's voice. I still have a voice. And I can't play like Rob, but I still have a voice through the piano. It's still just a means of expressing myself, and sometimes short-circuiting my logic, like hacking my own logic. Like, how do you feel? And being able to say things musically that I don't have words to say.
Why didn't Omis make the the project?
The sound quality is very poor. And I love that vocal take so much that every time we would go back in and cut it again, I'd be like, it's just not, this doesn't hit me the same way as that. Because that recording was in my living room. And I couldn't recapture that magic. And I didn't want to shortchange it.
I think that's what makes I mean, I did notice the difference of sound quality, but I think that's also what makes the track, for me, more incredible, because it's like, it's more of a natural presence of your voice versus an in-studio, like, oh, this girl actually, this girl has a lot of talent and is out-singing anyone, and it really highlights your voice.
Well, I think when I was learning how to sing in a studio, I was working at the Roots studio, and I had nodules growing in my thyroid. They started small, but they ultimately became quite large. I had more than 40 of them in there and had to have my thyroid removed. But while they were growing, I didn't know. And I couldn't sing with power on a regular basis, and I couldn't sing extremely high on a regular basis. And I adopted this, people will tell you, they'll be like, my producers would tell me, not Sam, but my pre-Sam, my producers would tell me, like, that doesn't sound good. Like, why don't you just kind of talk, like whisper, sing it, like talk. And I developed a complex about my voice, like, oh, I can't sing. Like, I can only sing very soft. I can only, like, and you get these engineers and they want the sexiest take, which is like the breathiest take. And I've never been a power singer, and I never felt that I could do it. So I was very insecure with my voice, and I never understood why I couldn't sing louder or harder or those things. So I think it was really liberating for me to be able to be in my living room and be like, but yes, I can, and at that time I still had, and didn't even know that I had, but I still had so many nodules in my thyroid as before I had my thyroid removed. So from day to day, the size of them would shift. And when they finally took it out, there was a big thyroid wrapped around my vocal nerve, my superior laryngeal nerve, and explained a lot. So I love that recording of that song, because I know everything else that was going on, and I was just like fighting through so much, just not just like emotionally, intellectually, but like physically, and it still broke through. Like, yes, break free.
That's awesome. New project is Beautiful Prison.
Yes.
NIkki Jean, thank you so much for being in the library with Tim Einenkel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you coming down here and spending it with me.
Wish I heard the hiss of blank tape. The scene is dead, the scene is dead, and I keep coming back to you. The dream is dead, the dream is dead, and everything is red, black, and blue. Like my eyes each time we fight. The sky, morning and noon. Ink on the page we tried to write, tried too soon. Red, black, and blue. Red, black, and blue. No white flag, just fire, ice, and ashes. No surrender, and nothing worth fighting for. We used to go to war, and then we'd pray for peace. Now we've made our peace with war. Forgive us our daily bread and keep hope alive. The dream is dead, the dream is dead, and everything is blue, black, and red. Like my eyes each time we fight. died too soon. Red, black, and blue. Red, black, and blue. Tears as hard and sharp as diamonds under this street light. They beg the dollar cross for rivers, sticks, and domes. Afterlife, maybe it's heaven, baby. Heaven's red, black, and blue.
Hey, I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, in celebration of International Guitar Month, Pete Townsend of The Who will join us.
Pete went deep with us into his relationship with the guitar and with music in general, the new Broadway version of Tommy. He clarified the status and the future of The Who, and much, much more.
Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.